look at that. We have the music.
Hey, it worked.
Yay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, everybody.
Happy Sunday. Today is Sunday, December, 13th?
13th,
2020. And you are joining us right now for the Mormon News Report podcast, Come Follow Me lesson, which we do every Sunday on our Facebook page, the Mormon News Report podcast. I am joined today again by our good friend, Ben Bernards. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me back. Glad to be able to help out, and looks like might be joining class a little bit more frequently here. So thanks again, everybody, for having me.
Yeah, we've got some class business to attend to, I think. Of course,
the clipboard, have the people in the back sign in, say that they were all here. Yes,
exactly. If you can pass the clipboard around, and we'll make sure it gets to the front of the room before the end of the class. John Dye is here with us, of course, as always. He is responsible for all the things that you see on your screen when it moves around, and like that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Of course, we would love to know where you're watching from today. Leave a comment, let us know. So as for the class business, like Ben mentioned, he's going to be joining us a little more often. Brant and I were talking this past week, and as often happens, family circumstances make it so, and other responsibilities make it so that things, can get a little more difficult. And we want to make sure that this is something that is, that this Come Follow Me lesson, this virtual lesson, is something that is, we never ever want it to be something that's stressful. We want it to be enjoyable. We want it to be something that adds peace rather than stress. And sometimes Brant actually has some more grown-up responsibilities than I have, that's for sure. And those things happen on Sundays. And so we had a talk about it. It took us about 5 seconds among Brant and myself, to realize that we would love for Ben to fill in if he's willing and able. And here you are.
And here I am. Yeah. So thankfully, it looks like my kids are a little bit older than Brant's are, and for whatever reason, my stake or my callings right now are like non-existent in church. And I've been itching to have some opportunity to teach and to speak and to work with people again. So I'm totally thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Well, when you joined us a few weeks ago and just did a stellar job. You're always someone who is just, top commenter. Is that a thing? Do we need to get a badge for you?
I don't know where that badge even come from. I'm like, okay, I promise it wasn't me that typed it up and inserted that in the code above my name. So Facebook feed with a little diamond on there or whatever. But
yeah, so we've got Blue Check Ben with us, and we're really glad that you can be here, and you're joining us from the Pacific Coast, so an hour earlier than I am in Utah. We've got people joining us from all over, though. We've got Ordine in Idaho Falls, and Bella from Guyana, Helen from Idaho. Good morning, everyone. One thing that John and I were talking about, and this is surprise because Ben, we didn't discuss this, but something that we may do going forward is we want to maybe play around with the idea of other people submitting a little more. We love hearing where you're from, and we don't always get to every single comment. People who participate in this via the live stream are so generous and kind in sharing their experiences, sharing the thoughts that they have had throughout their study during the week, or just how what we're studying applies to their lives. And we would love to involve that more. So we're gonna, moving forward, I think, and we'll talk about this later, Ben, and surprise, Brant, for when you listen to this, but we have some ideas about that. So thanks everyone again for being here. And again, we do have people who participate on the live stream who do not leave comments, and that's totally fine, whatever, your comfort level. We've also
got the lurkers that are sitting there in the background, that if you're comfortable in the back rows of the classroom or whatever, we see you and we hear you, and we're glad that you're here.
Absolutely. We want to say hi to, is it Weary from New Zealand, and then also to Chris from Vegas. We recognize Chris's name. So thanks, everyone. Ben, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, actually. I mean, we're getting closer to Christmas out here in California. It's actually raining for the first time in like 7 months, so this is fabulous. And my daughter is coming home from college this week. She's been able to stay in a little COVID bubble up in Rexburg for weeks and weeks, even though her FHE brothers got it, her roommate got it, the girl in her own bedroom got it, everybody else around her got it, but she didn't get it. So we are crossing our fingers and saying life is good. So she gets to come home for Christmas, and we are all very happy.
Wow, yeah, that does sound like a COVID bubble.
Yeah.
No, but good for her. That's good that she was able to stay healthy and that she could be in person the whole semester. That's outstanding. Yeah. How long will she be home?
Looks like about 3 weeks.
Wow.
So we get to have her here just long enough to get back in the groove. Like, I mean, when she left, it's my first kid going away to college, first time ever figuring this out. And it took us a while to, when the kid leaves the nest and you're like, okay, what's the new normal? How do you get into your schedule and everything? And once she finally left, we were kind of used to it. And then she came home for Thanksgiving, and it was great for the first couple of days, but it still felt like she was a visitor, but also kind of like somebody into the family. And just when we got used to it, she left again and went back up for the final 3 weeks. And so she'll probably be home long enough that we can get her back in the chore rotation and have her like walking the dog and doing the dishes and all that sort of thing. And just when she's sick and tired of mom and dad telling her what to do, she gets to take off and go back into another semester and be an adult and a grown up and all that all over again.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's good. It works out for everyone. And she's got younger siblings, right?
Yeah, I've got 2 boys, one junior high and high school as well. They're at home.
So were they really excited when she came home? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes boys aren't as,
whatever. It's my sister. No, she is. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out from Pixar, there is the personification of joy, the happy little protagonist. Yeah. That's her. I mean, she's just this little ball of sunshine that kind of glues the whole rest of the family together. And it really changed the vibe in the household when she was no longer there. And so when she comes home, it's like you open the doors and the windows and the sun shines back and the energy's back and the volume level goes up 5 times in the house, and it's wonderful. The dog totally loves it as well. So yeah, my boys are really thrilled to see her back.
Oh, good. Well, that's exciting. That's great. I hope everyone has some stuff to look forward to for the holiday season and having, being able to be with loved ones, which isn't the case for everyone. That's what a blessing. That's really cool. That's really cool. I want to say hi to Lisa as well, who chimed in, and of course, Bob and Sandy in Arizona. Thank you for being here. If you don't have any objections, we can start right in here. The lesson today is called "May Christ Lift Thee Up." And it covers Moroni chapters 7 through 9. And I don't know about you, but one thing that was interesting for me is as I was studying the chapter and even, kind of listening to it on the app, the audio, there are a lot of scriptures in this, a lot of verses rather, in this lesson that we hear quite often. I think maybe mostly in chapter 7, things that, if you when you're at church, if you ever see those missionary plaques, I don't know if that's a kind of a standard thing. I think it is. But when the missionaries have their plaques of where they are and they have an opportunity to have part of the plaque of, this is my favorite scripture. I feel like there are a lot of those scriptures that kind of get at, depending on your experience, your age maybe, and where you are in life, that if you were to be asked, what is the essence of the gospel, that you might pull a verse from this first chapter, chapter 7 in Moroni.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because like in the previous discussion and the previous several chapters, you can kind of see how Moroni's perspective has changed over time. It's like before he'd just come out of a battle. He saw his father and everybody else died. He's thinking that he's going to die and he's done. And so he writes an ending. And then he finishes and he's like, wait a minute, I'm still here. Oh, and I still got a little bit of room. And we don't know how much time has transpired just yet. But you can tell that his tone has kind of shifted, and if he's got just 1 or 2 little metal sheets because he mentioned earlier, he says, or have I none? I'm totally alone. It's like he can't go and just, punch a mountain like Minecraft style and get himself some new ore or whatever. So he's got a fixed amount of space. And on that space, he's deciding what does he want to share if he can. And he gives us this gem of a treatise on love and the spirit of Christ and how to know right from wrong and faith and hope. And I don't know about you, but if I had just witnessed an absolute decimation of our entire civilization, I kind of would think that love would be the last thing on my mind. If I'm running for my life, if I'm carrying this, let's say 80-pound bag of gold plates, if he was carrying them with him, or maybe he, chucked them in a cave and left them there and went back and checked on them, we don't know. But if he's in constant survival mode, trying to be charitable to the Lamanites would not be at the forefront of my mindset.
Right.
But something has shifted for him over time. Some sort of reflection must have taken place because of all the things that he could have said, of all the things that he could have left behind. He says, guys, we need to talk about what the Spirit of Christ is. We need to help you understand how to judge between right and wrong. And I want you to understand how faith and hope and love and charity and all these things are intertwined with each other, because ultimately that's what's going to get you closer to God. And maybe this is where he's coming from, is he's looking at the failures of his entire civilization. He's looking at the failures of all the people that had come before him. And he could try to pin it on military or political or economic or environmental disasters, all the other things that they likely did have. But being in the mindset of a prophet leader who's trying to talk to his future descendants, he says, if there's something that I want these people to know, kind of like I said at the very beginning of the Book of Mormon, if there's anything that points us towards Christ, anything that will help us focus our attentions on him, that's what he wanted to get in there. And so now after he's changed and he's mellowed out and he's reflected, he's like, okay, I'm going to put some of these letters that my dad had put in there. I'm going to put some additional thoughts. And I just really want everybody focus their last attention towards Jesus. And that's what we get in these 2 chapters. So it's understandable to see why so many missionaries would say, wow, if I could sum it up in a tweet, right? That's the gospel in a tweet. It's like 140 characters or 1 or 2 little verses. It would likely come from one of these. This is like you boil down the soup and you get the yum-yums down at the end. It's kind of like this concentrated umami goodness. That's what we've got here in these last 2 chapters.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Just kind of boiling down. Brent and I talked a little bit last week in the lesson about the idea of kind of your own, last will and testament. If you're gonna leave, your last words, and very few of us, let's be honest, know when the time is coming for us, and so have the opportunity to say these are our last words. And certainly, it's not like Moroni wrote these words and then keeled over and was gone. However, as far as the record that we have of him, it's this idea of exactly that. What is the most boiled down? What is at the core of what I want to be, what I want to spread is the most important thing, the essence of the gospel, the thing whether it's what I want to be known for, or what I want my my descendants to remember me for, or to focus on. If they were to ask me, but I'm not around, and exactly that, focusing on love. What did you say it was that he wrote? I mean, the way you said it was really eloquent. I liked it. I don't remember what you said. Maybe you don't know because you just speak that way. So real quick, I want to go to just say hi to a few people who checked in. Nancy, hello from West Jordan. Mary, hello in Buffalo, and Rosalind from Provo. Laurel shares some thoughts here. He didn't focus on the natural man. He focused on his connection to Christ. I believe this is what happens before you die. I mean, please bless. And like I said before, not many of us have that opportunity. Sometimes, people die unexpectedly and without the opportunity to say the thing that they would say as their last words.
I think Laurel brings up a really good point, and thank you, Laurel, for sharing. When he says that he focused on his connection to Christ. I'm looking at this verse right now, in particular, in one of the things that the lesson had talked about is Moroni 7:13. If I could just read that real quick. In Moroni 7:13, he says, "But behold, that which is of God inviteth and enticeth to do good continually. Wherefore, everything which inviteth and enticeth to do good and to love God and to serve him is inspired of God." Everything that brings you closer to him, there it is. That which is of God invites and entices to do good continually. One of the things that I love about this, and Laura, like you were saying with this connection to Christ, is that this allows for the borders or the boundaries of Christianity and discipleship to be infinitely huge. When we look at some of the previous chapters, some of them focused on the nuts and bolts of discipleship, right? Here's how you baptize. Here's how you do sacrament. Here's how you do the prayers. Here's how they're organized. It's like the DNC, right? Here's how you do all this sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the line, it seems like Moroni realized that the gospel is bigger than that. It's bigger than the ceremonies. It's bigger than the organization and the structure. And especially him living as a solo disciple, if he was the only guy out there, he couldn't have been having the same level of organizational support that he had before, right? Mm-hmm. His entire religious model is completely gone, but his connection to Christ wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so here he's what I love that he's telling us in 7:13 is that he says, there are lots of good truths out there in the world, and he's not going to try to list everything you have to find. He's not going to give us a laundry list or a checkbox of, if you do these things, you're considered a good Christian. Anything that invites you and entices you to do good comes from God. If it invites you to love God or to serve him, it's inspired of him. And for me, this has been kind of an eye-opening perspective to have. I think I mentioned before, I grew up in Utah County. I was in my high school. We had 2,000 kids in the high school, and 1,900 of them went to seminary with me. Right? I mean, it's the typical Utah County experience. Mm-hmm. And so I was very much in this insular world of Mormonism is the truth, and everything else out there is fake. And then coming outside of that bubble and seeing all the other places that are out there, like we can see all the wonderful people joining us in class today. We know that the world is a whole lot bigger than what we see just in our own little version of it. And the version of Christianity that I enjoy the most is that big border version, the one that is able to look out and see the good anywhere, mm-hmm. and to see the inspiration and say, hey, this invites me and entices me to do good. This invites me to love God, to serve him. And like we know from King Benjamin, if it entices me to serve other people, then that comes from God. And so because of that, we can see that truth can come down through multiple places, right? Truth can come in through a lot of different avenues, and it can be filtered through multiple prisms. And then our job, I guess, if you could think of it that way, is to not just put on our blinders and say, nope, truth is only coming in this one direction, but truth can come out anywhere. Yeah. So maybe if I could pose a question out to the class, and we'd love to hear some feedback from the students. What other places have you seen sources where God is inviting you to serve him or love him anywhere, no matter where they come from? If you have a comment, please leave it in the chat. We'd love to hear.
Thank you for that, Ben. Do you want to, or John we can type that comment in that question in the comment section so that people can reply to it. I want to mention one thing, and thank you for reading that. In Moroni chapter 7, verse 13, which you just read, one thing stands out to me there, which is, as it says, wherefore everything which inviteth and enticeth to do good and to love God and to serve him is inspired of God. It doesn't say the word everything. It's two different words, everything. Because I think a lot of times when we use the word everything, just to be all encompassing, which isn't that it doesn't apply here, because it literally is the combination of the two words. But when we think about it as the two separate words, it's everything. That makes me think at least of more individual things rather than to just kind of, ironically, I guess, blanketly, within this kind of huge thing, to look at things individually, because they deserve our attention and they deserve our consideration in those ways. John, did you have a short video about this while we're...
Yeah, in the lesson today, they had a video from Elder Bednar. Let's just play that. It's quite short, but let's just play that really quickly.
People sometimes will question whether it's inspiration or whether it's my own thought. We have to act, then we find out if it's coming from me or if it's the power of God. So, for example, you may have an occasion where you fail to say your morning prayers, and you all of a sudden hear the voice of your mother, who, when you were a small boy, would say, remember to say your morning prayers, remember to say your evening prayers. Well, why would God send an angel to deliver that message to you when the Holy Ghost can bring back to you the recollection or the remembrance of your angel mother reminding you to pray? The effect is the same. Everything that invites and entices us to do good and to be good comes from God. People might ask, well, why not make it easy to recognize all the time? I would suggest that the simple answer is because God trusts us. He shouldn't have to dramatically shake us to get our attention. Those who are baptized members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints receive by the laying on of hands the gift of the Holy Ghost. Now, any person anywhere in the world can and is influenced by the Holy Ghost. But after baptism by proper authority, one receives this ordinance of the Holy Ghost. That gift, as it operates in our life, as we seek and ask, invites inspiration from heaven and revelation.
Okay, how about now?
Got it.
Great, okay. My bad. I was just giving some attention to some of the comments here. Hello to Mary in Syracuse. Hello to Bonnie in Corvallis, Montana. Hi to Tony in England. And I like what our dean says. He could have used each thing rather than everything, which, Ben, when you were talking about it, I think what you used actually is anything.
Yeah.
And hello, good morning to Joan. And here, the question that Ben shares, and we'd love to hear your answers. In your life, what sources bring you to worship God, serve Him, or serve others? And that, I really like the message from Elder Bednar that John just shared, which, to me, a lot of that is remembrances from our past. Maybe it's, like he mentioned, the reminder of your mother's voice or whoever that happens to be in your life, asking you to pray, reminding you to pray. Maybe it's something that's a habit that Ben, earlier you talked about your daughter off at college, and maybe it's something where, every night or most nights for her entire life, she knelt by her bed before climbing into bed. Well, then she finds herself at university in a new experience in an apartment or a dorm situation, and she's about to get into bed, and wait a second, this is where she finds, something where it's just kind of muscle memory almost. I think those are all very significant as well. I think for me, one thing that helps me is, to be honest, music can be a good source of feeling the spirit and really kind of, if not calming, then certainly centering my focus and my spirit on the things that are important. That's something that helps me. And I mentioned that, I think, because it's Christmas, and so at least in our home, we're being very intentional about the kind of music that we listen to. And I was thinking the other day, like, wow, how nice.
It's only Mariah Carey, guys. That's all we listen to.
24/7.
It's
all I want for Christmas is a different Christmas jingle.
It's all we need. It really is. But it's, I was thinking, like, wow, how nice would it be if we just kind of had a whole catalog for, or a genre for other seasons throughout the year to
Valentine's music.
Yeah, exactly. So we have an answer here. Comment Sandy in Arizona shares, the community of Sierra Vista has impressed us with many opportunities to do for others who are less fortunate. Other churches that collectively work together and community organizations that all work together has shown us how God's love come from many different sources. That's a great point, Sandy. I wonder if sometimes those are things. One reason why I'm really grateful for Just Serve is that it shows in a very transparent way the partnership with other organizations that the church has established in doing those humanitarian efforts rather throughout the world. It doesn't always. I don't get me wrong. I am not discounting tithes and offerings and missionary fund and that sort of thing, but at the same time, here, on Just Serve, which I think John is sharing right now, there are other organizations. If there's something that you are passionate about, that you really want to get involved with, at a time when it isn't Christmas and we maybe aren't thinking about things the way that we tend to do, but frankly ought to throughout the year. This is something where when you feel that urge to do good, it's a great resource.
Yeah, there are two examples that came to my mind in looking around and seeing how other people have helped me come closer to Christ. One of them, so out here in Sacramento, there's not a ton of there's not a lot of churches around compared to other places, say like in Utah or in the South. I used to live in Texas for a little while, so we saw what it was like to have a very vibrant religious community. It's not quite that way out here in California. But there still are little pockets. And just next to us, one of my neighbors and one of my coworkers who lives just down the street goes to a different church, very small congregation, maybe 30, 40 people. But he's been there. His dad is part of the leadership. And every year they do a living walk through the streets of Bethlehem experience at Christmas time. Wow. Where they have a little bit of farmland just on the outskirts of town. And the idea is, you pull up and they have little candlelit lanterns that take you out into the middle of this huge field. So far, like
community.
Yeah. It's just totally their own thing. So you're out in the middle of this big pasture and it's, late at night, there's only just starlight. And if you brought a flashlight and you can see, a couple 100 yards up ahead, there's a campfire. And so you pull up and you bring your family and they say, go walk towards the first campfire and follow your directions. And so you'll go walking down through the field. You get there and there's a handful of, it's a family sitting around saying, we're visiting from Bethlehem. We heard something's going on there. And they have this little role play that they do where they share a small little script and they say, go on over there. We saw some other people. So you walk down through the field a little bit more and they have people dressed as shepherds with real live barn animals like sheep and goats and stuff. And they sit down and then this guy tells about how he saw this angel come down. And then you keep walking along and there's, these wise men. And then you turn around the corner and then there's this little stable that they've built. And it's like this whole, kind of like a living nativity plus a 20-minute role play kind of a thing. Wow. And we took our kids to that. And it was a completely different experience. I mean, I've done Lights at Temple Square. We've done all the family, the Christmas sing-alongs, the Messiah stuff. But for me to take my kids and say, we're going to go to somebody else's church and we're going to see how they celebrate Christmas and what do they do to bring your focus onto Christ. We came out at the end of it and I looked at my wife and said, this filled my cup in ways that I have not had happen in other ways. I want to help support these guys. I'm not here to try to convert them or try to get them to change. These guys are good, honest, God-loving, Christ-worshiping people. And we need more people like that in this world. So I was so wonderfully thrilled to see that they could do that little tiny bit to give it to the community. And now every year they do that. And so as soon as we see their sign come up, it's like 2 nights only. And tonight at 5 o'clock, we're taking our boys to go down to their one starry night is what they call it.
That's awesome. I think that's so great. And that's another thing that the Christmas season, it's a gift to us in communities, in interfaith communities where we can, we have opportunities to participate in those kind of things with one another. And that's beautiful. That's super cool. There's some great comments here too. I want to go to, let's see, Laurel shares, if it's your intention, everything is God's influence, which is why we're living, to become one with him. Yes, thank you, Laurel. Chris, who tunes in from Vegas, says, here in Sin City, there are amazing people who look for opportunities to serve and help in the community. A great example was the mass shooting that occurred here a couple of years ago and the outpouring of love and service that occurred here. It's my experience that there are so many good people in the world. I belong to several Facebook pages that are constantly looking for opportunities to help others. Yeah, Chris, isn't it interesting that in the face of tragedy, you see people pull together in ways that maybe otherwise they wouldn't. Rosalind shares, perhaps if we wrote down previous experiences of inspiration, we are more likely or more easily reminded of those previous teachings through the Holy Ghost, of course. Absolutely. We've talked extensively about the idea of keeping journals and the benefits and how grateful we are that these records that we're studying were kept, of course. Ordine says, working with other people from different religions can bring you to love all people. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about the helping hands, the yellow t-shirts, you know, and we shared, I think it was on the podcast, a video that I saw, I think on TikTok, where someone was like, and the Mormons showed up, and you know what? I didn't know this about them. And it goes both ways. It goes both ways for sure. Ryan shares, for awfully is the wickedness to suppose that God saveth one child because of baptism. Okay, yes, that scripture about baptizing children. That is, I think, also in chapter 7, maybe 8. And where he says, when people flash in your mind to minister to them. Now that's really good, because just like we were talking about before, kind of whether it's from experience and practice, that muscle memory of saying prayers, or if it is exactly that flash of inspiration, I think that also goes to the video that Elder Bednar said, which is that we act on it. If something comes to our mind, and more specifically to our heart, and we act on it, that is like a muscle that is strengthened, where we can be more in tune to know and be on the lookout, at least for the needs of others. I want to continue in the scriptures. Ben, earlier you read chapter 7, verse 13, and I want to just add to that a few other verses that immediately follow it, because I think that as we're talking about that, if someone comes to mind, one question that we often have is exactly that. How do I know if that's a prompting? Is it a prompting, or is that just something that I happen to think of randomly, subconsciously, like, oh, look, there's a red plant, and that reminds me because this other person has a red plant? Or is it, exactly that? Is it from God? And so in Moroni chapter 7, starting in verse 14, wherefore take heed, my beloved brethren, that ye do not judge that which is evil to be of God, or that which is good and of God to be of the devil. For behold, my brethren, it is given unto you to judge, that ye may know good from evil. And the way to judge is as plain, that ye may know with a perfect knowledge, as the daylight is from the dark night. For behold, the Spirit of Christ is given to every man, that he may know good from evil. Wherefore I show unto you the way to judge. For everything which inviteth, there it is again, everything which inviteth to do good and to persuade to believe in Christ is set forth by the power and gift of Christ. Wherefore ye may know with a perfect knowledge it is of God. And I really like this. It seems very plain and simple, because it kind of is, but this question, from President this question, President Hinckley addressed it about how do we recognize the promptings of the Spirit? Do we know, is this the Spirit or is this just me? And he said, he quoted Moroni 7:13, and then he said, I don't think it's too difficult, really. Does it persuade one to do good, to rise, to stand tall, to do the right thing, to be kind, to be generous? Then it is of the Spirit of God. And I think that the reason I really like that he said that is because I wonder if a lot of times we think along the lines of, well, is this in the context of being, how do I say this, of being churchy? But it doesn't need to be under the umbrella of church or religion. He's saying, is this encouraging me or someone else to be better in whatever realm that might be, to be kind and to be generous? If so, then it's good. The source of it is good. It is good. And, we can trust that it's something we should do and follow through with.
Absolutely. That perspective that President Hinckley shares, I think can take a lot of the spiritual revelation anxiety off of our shoulders, because it can be easy to fall into this trap of oh, well, this thought came in and should I follow the Spirit? Am I doing the right thing? And what if I don't do it? And bad things are going to happen. And God was trying to tell me. And he kind of simplifies it. He's like, look, if it's good, just give it a shot. If the good things happen and it's asking you to help your neighbor or to be a good person, that's really all that we're asking about. And when it keeps boiling down to those simple, basic, foundational concepts of loving God and loving others, right? And that's the way that we can know where it is from God. And most importantly, it's that it's not just where does it come from, and it's not just where is it coming from, but what are we going to do about it? There's something actually. I think my wife is really good at this. She mentions many times how she was like, I was just having this thought about this person today, and I decided I needed to show them a little bit of love. And so she would go find whatever way she needed to show that person love, whether it was phone calls, letters, bake them a treat, go over, talk to them, whatever that person needed. Something, honestly, that I've really come to admire, and I don't know if it's just teaching from the Relief Society, because I know that she has mentioned that this is something that has come up quite frequently in Relief Society lessons, and I don't hear it as much in Elders Quorum as much. It almost feels like we get to Elders Quorum lessons and our discussions are more about, all right, who's helping so-and-so move? It's like a lot of the stereotypical stuff. And I think if we would refocus our time a little bit more on that non-structured intuitive revelation that comes that says, look, if there's something inside that's moving you to do good things, maybe you should listen to those voices that are telling you to do good things, because really that's what personal revelation is all about.
Yeah, I like that. I like what Tony shares. Of course, this reminds me of the Light of Christ and Doctrine and Covenants 88:6-16, and listening to our conscience, and we get that choice to do or not to do every single day. And you know what, Ben, as you mentioned your wife following through on those promptings, I bet that throughout the course of her life, as she has done that, it has become, if not easier, then at least a clearer directive, I guess. And one thing I also want to talk about, because it's an important part of the lesson, is as we get into chapter 8, is the principle that understanding correct doctrine can help us make correct choices. And there's something you said, I wish I would have taken a note. You mentioned, Ben, the pressure, that there can be a pressure that comes with these things. I'll be honest, I from my perspective, there have been times in my life where I have thought, well, I don't know the scriptures as well. I don't, I didn't go on a mission, and so I don't have the scriptural training that some of my peers, right?
Whatever.
Yeah, well, that my peers do in a more formal setting. I mean, yes, I went to seminary. Maybe I slept through it. None of your business. But and what that has done is that has caused me to actually feel quite insecure about how I proceed in being confident about moving forward and knowing, is this the right thing, because of what I perceive to be my lack of understanding of doctrine, when actually what we've been talking about asking ourselves, is this good? And again, I'm not downplaying the importance of studying doctrine. We do need to study doctrine. We do need to know, as we've been talking about, the ins and outs of how to proceed, but also to not discount that very thing, being in tune with the Spirit, listening, asking yourself, is this, if I were to do the thing that just came to my mind, is that me being kind? Is that me being generous? Is that me showing love? Is this something, to ask ourselves, is this something the Savior would have me do? Does not require a deep foundational knowledge of doctrine.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a really good point, Jenny. And first off, that whole idea of imposter syndrome is terribly common, and it can be absolutely crippling, especially when we are surrounded by others that we think have done more and experienced more, and they're better at it. And I look at myself and I'm like, who am I compared to you? Yea, verily, I am nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if at the end of the life, when the gray rain curtain of this world is pulled back and we get to see how things really worked, I wonder how many times the revelations that God gives to prophets and leaders and everybody else are going to be packaged and delivered in the exact same size and shape as the tiny little dewdrop that, lands on your head and says, hey, go do something nice for your neighbor. And we realize that was it all along. It always has been. That's the way that the revelation came. Before we get into chapter 8, could we talk a little bit in Moroni 7 at the end, this 7:7, this little section?
Yes.
So, friends in the class, if that's okay with you, and for those of you that are listening, I'm going to nerd out just a little bit on the background of the language here. I sent a couple of pictures over to John, and some of the things that I wanted to talk about today was this section on what the scriptures just refer to as charity. And let me kind of tee this up before we launch into it. In English, we use the word love all the time, right? And if we have context clues, we know kind of what we mean. Like if I say, I love pizza, or I love video games, or I love my grandmother, or I love my dog, or I love my wife, or I love my kids, all of those things have a slightly different meaning, right? And well, certainly hope so. Some days my wife just makes my heart go pitter patter, and there's other days when I see a big garlicky cheesy pizza and I have pretty much the exact same response where I just want it. It's awesome. But there's more to it, and there's more different types that we can actually have. And inside the scriptures, I think we have lost something of the meaning and of the magic through the translation process. Nothing malicious. It's just the nature of how an oral story got passed verbally and then written down and then written into another language. So one of my favorite things was to realize that the old world had actually almost a dozen different types of the word love. And it wasn't just like love in a context like I just used it, but they literally had different words to describe each thing. And here's the secret. In the original scriptures, they actually used those different words in different scenarios. So I'd like to lay out just a couple of these words and help you see, and hopefully that would give us a new lens through which to look at what Moroni says here in 747, okay? So we're gonna talk about 4 of them. The first type of love, and these are all from the original Greek. You find them in any Greek lexicon. If you do a search for an online interlinear Bible, you'll see this stuff listed there. And other languages have similar expressions as well, but we'll pick the Greek because it's very similar to what we see in English. So the first one that we see is what they call filio. If you've ever, everybody learned in American history, the city of Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love, right? Well, that's literally what it means. Filio is the love between brothers or sisters, but not necessarily direct blood relation. But the idea here is it's a person that you see as an equal. This is more than just a casual acquaintance, more than just a friend. This is a person with whom you would go into battle, a person with whom you would spend all night talking and sharing your deep secrets, a person that you'd be willing to fight and live and actually die for. All right. So when you say that you have filio towards a person, they understood all of that. And so they could use that word filio and say, yo, I filio you, man. And they know exactly what you're talking about. All right. So that's the first one. The second one that we see here is eros. This is romantic, passionate, sexual attraction love. This is twoo love in all of its glorious form. That's the kind of making your heart go pitter patter when you see a person and you really want to be with that person. And it is a natural, loving, beautiful kind of love that draws people together. And the cool thing about it is that it starts out as kind of like lighter fluid on a fire, where it's really easy to catch a spark. And if you nourish it and tend it over time, it can gradually become refined into like a slow burning coal furnace kind of a fire. So that's the second. That's it. We have filio, and then we had eros. And that's where the word like erotic came from. You probably saw that in it. Okay. Number 3, storge. This is parental affection. This is the kind where the mom can look right through the messed up Thor from the future and say, I know you, boy. And she still sees the hero. She can still see the worthiness inside. This is when the parent looks down at a kid and says, nope, I know that you messed up. I love you enough to call you out on it. I love you enough to guide you on it. And I love you enough to be forgiving even when you screw up. This is the kind of love that you cannot feel any other way until you have your own kids. And it's kind of weird that way, because you can hear about it, you can talk about it and whatnot, but until you've got your own, it just won't make sense. It's kind of like riding a bike. You can read as many books as you want on riding a bicycle, but until you've actually done it, it doesn't make sense. Now that brings us to the fourth one. The fourth one is a really interesting word. It's the word agape, right? It sounds kind of like escape from Finding Nemo. This word this means a self-sacrificing kind of love. This is the kind of love that would volunteer your own life in place of somebody else. This is the kind of love where you look at something horrible that has to be done and you realize that giving up of yourself is the only way to make it happen. This is the kind of love where you voluntarily go through a transformative experience, and because you love either an individual or a group or a collective or an ideal, you are willing to give up something of yourself. So that's the fourth one. That's agape. Okay, so we saw filio, eros, storge, and agape. Now, what's the point? So here is the kicker. Agape has been talked about in Christianity for a long, long time. And I found this beautiful quote from Martin Luther King. He says, quote, agape is something of the understanding, creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. It is a love that seeks nothing in return. It is an overflowing love. It's what theologians would call the love of God working in the lives of men. And when you rise to love on this level, you begin to love men, not because they're likable, but because God loves them. That's from a sermon he gave in 1957, church in Montgomery, Alabama. So hopefully you can kind of see that what this agape is. It's something that when you have it, first off, it's a process. It's not like a one-time thing that like you pick up and say, I now have agape for you, whatever, right? It takes time to develop. And in the developing, we also develop. And it's something that has a transformative experience on us as we learn to have that God-like, Christ-like love. Obviously, you can see if it is self-sacrificing, now you can start to see ahead. If I were to go back and look at the original New Testament and written in the original Greek, the oldest version we have, John 3:16 would say, for God so agape the world that he gave his only begotten son. Later on in John 12, when Christ says to his disciples, he says, by this shall all men know ye are my disciples, if ye have agape one for another. And here's where things have changed. Go ahead, John. Where things have changed over time. The translation of agape has gone through a lot of different words, but the most common one we see nowadays is rendered as the word charity. Now, this might change what we think about charity, because I don't know about you, but growing up, charity meant giving stuff to the poor. Charity meant being kind to the neighbor. Charity was something that was on the Relief Society emblem in that big room that my mom went to. It was something that I was told that I was supposed to have, and it was something that I saw in the scriptures, but I didn't really understand what it meant. And now, if you were to go back and you can, with an interlinear Bible, you can actually look for any time the word charity appears in the New Testament, and it'll show you what the original Greek was. And it's always rendered as this word agape. So this idea of the type of love that Jesus is wanting us to have, the type of love that he's wanting us to experience, it's not just the way that we treat the neighbors. It's not just the way that we treat the people around us, but it's what happens to us as a result of feeling that sort of love. So here's another question, and this would be a great thing. We'll go ahead and put this in a chat, but something hopefully for people to think about. With that understanding then of what agape means and what charity means, what do we mean then by that term, charity never faileth? And I'll go ahead and just read these two verses from Moroni chapter 7, and then we'll go ahead and move on. But this is Moroni 7, 45, 47, 48. So hopefully with that understanding of what agape means and how it can affect us, here's what Moroni has to say about this love. Charity suffereth long, and is kind, and envieth not, is not puffed up, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth. Beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, if ye have not agape, ye are nothing. For agape never faileth. Wherefore, cleave unto charity, which is the greatest of all. For all things must fail. But charity is the pure love of Christ, and it endureth forever. And whoso is found possessed of it at the last day, it shall be well with him. And here is a fascinating little tidbit that he gives us. The way that we can get it is in verse 48. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, pray unto the Father with all the energy of heart, that ye may be filled with this love, which he hath bestowed upon all who are true followers of his Son, Jesus Christ, that ye may become the sons and daughters of God, that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, that we may have this hope, that we may be purified even as he is pure.
Wow. Wow. That was a lot. And I am grateful that you went to that detail, because I think that is that's wonderful. As I'm listening to you and reading along in Moroni chapter 7, I'm reminded of in 1 Corinthians, I believe it's 13, there's something similar. And you often hear that recited at wedding ceremonies, or vow renewals. It's important when we talk about what love is. But I love that you say, you point out that in verse 48, that this is how to acquire that, or how to move toward that state, that agape. So this from President Oakes: charity, the pure love of Christ, is not an act, but a condition or state of being, which, you mentioned before, Ben. It's not like, okay, I've arrived, I'm agape, and this is what, charity is something one becomes from.
That's a state. That's exactly what you were saying. It's not just a feeling, right? It's a state.
Right. Yeah. So
and it's kind of humbling when we realize that it's something that I feel like I catch glimpses of, and then I go back to my regularly scheduled programming, and I'm still a dad, and I'm still a husband and a friend, and I forget it. It's like, as much, and maybe that's why we do this on Sundays. Maybe that's why we do the scripture study, and we try to have this muscle memory, so we can say there's that ideal that's out there, and sometimes I had it and it's gone. So we pick ourselves up and we dust ourselves off, and we try again.
Yeah. And I'm so impressed with what you shared, because I've had people, or experiences where people are like, I love the earrings, and it's like, well, okay, and it's just,
I'm a TJ Maxx, they're on sale.
Mm-hmm. And so, but and that's not to diminish that in any way. It's that there are different levels and states of being when it comes to love. And and as we learn here too, that faith and hope and charity, love, they are all intertwined. I want to share this from President Uchtdorf. He talked about, he compared faith, hope, and charity to a stool with 3 legs, explaining that these 3 virtues stabilize our lives regardless of the rough or uneven surfaces we might encounter. Faith, hope, and charity complement each other, and as one increases, the others grow as well. Hope comes of faith, for without faith there is no hope. In like manner, faith comes of hope, for faith is the substance of things hoped for. Hope is critical to both faith and charity. When disobedience, disappointment, and procrastination erode faith, hope is there to uphold our faith. When frustration and impatience challenge charity, hope braces our resolve and urges us to care for our fellow men, even without expectation of reward. The brighter our hope, the greater our faith, the stronger our hope, the purer our charity. And I'll be honest, that's something where I'm going to have to sit down later and maybe draw a sort of flow chart, because I'm sure we can get some Venn diagrams or circular, things going on there. But I think it all applies to exactly what you were talking about, because there are times, I think, when we think about that state of being, maybe what we're feeling is more a sense of faith, or what we're feeling we would identify more as hope, but they're all not without each other. And that deeper dive that you just took into those types of love, very, very special and helpful. Thank you.
And Wiry agapes us, apparently.
Aw.
Yay!
And I think there were a couple of other comments too. There are lots of people are chiming in. They really love that. I think you win today, Ben, with that. But thank you very much, because I think that really helps with being thorough about when we say I love, and what that can mean. It appears that we're out of time. And so here we are. We are left with next week's lesson, which is Moroni 10. You guys.
Nothing big. I mean, there's a couple things to talk about there. It's fine.
Yeah. It's, little light reading for the week.
Yeah, we got nothing else going on.
Yeah. And following that, the next week will be a Christmas lesson. But for next week's lesson, it's called Come Unto Christ and Be Perfected in Him. It's for this coming week, December 14th through December 20th. And it is Moroni 10, the last chapter in the Book of Mormon. You guys, I don't want to jump the gun, but we did it, I guess. Oh, maybe. I cannot thank you all enough. I think we've had some wonderful participation here. I'm sorry that we didn't get to every single comment. Ben, thank you so much for all of your preparation, for your contribution, for the way that you are so thorough and all of this. We look forward to meeting again next week, as we always do, 9 a.m. ish. Mountain time, which is 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern, and all times in between. We have people joining us, from New Zealand, from England. Thank you all for being here. Ben, thanks for being here. We will probably be announcing more consistently on Facebook and on Twitter about who will be doing what. And also, like I mentioned at the beginning of class, we would love to have some more participation from our class members. I guess we can call them participants. John Dye, thank you so much for everything that you do here.
Behind the scenes and everybody else. Thank you guys. Yeah. This has been absolutely marvelous. Thank you for having me, and all the wonderful people in the chat. Thank you so much. It's been a great time with you, and look forward to a lot of wonderful classes with you.
Well, thank you. You add so much. You really do, and so we're really grateful. Next week, I'm guessing Brant will be with us, but again, who really knows? We'll figure it out. In the meantime, please give us a like on Facebook, Mormon News Report Podcast. And Ben, where can we find you online if we wanted to,
I'm on Instagram at Ben Bernards.
Cool.
and on Twitter as well. And that's pretty much me. Right now, we're getting ready for a couple of Stake Youth Firesides. I'm getting ready to kick off the new 2021 theme. So looking forward to some of those. And they're actually going to be broadcast online. So instead, we've got a multi-stake that I'm presenting for out here in a multi-group stake out here in California. And hopefully we'll have a handful more. Heck, if anybody else out there in the chat wants to do a Zoom fireside, it's a whole lot easier to travel now with this, since we can just do it through the magic of the internet. So, yep, we'll talk to you guys soon. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks. And yeah, my name is Jenny Noonan Dye. You can find me online, Twitter and Instagram at formerly Fred, which is FORMERLYPHREAD. And you can find Brant at the Mormon News. And John Dye, are you interested in?
Just Dyejo, DYEJO on Twitter.
Yeah. So thanks everyone again for joining us. We look forward to meeting again next week, like we talked about, and have a great week. And we'll talk to you soon.
Stay safe, stay well, everybody. Thank you.